I'd like to call to order tonight's instructional committee meeting. First item on the agenda is acceptance of meeting minutes, instructional committee meeting minutes of March 13, 2017.
Yeah.
Roxanne?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item, curriculum and possible consensus. Proposed adoption of new grade 7 English Language Arts, Unit 4, Culture and Voice.
Yes, and tonight we have Ms. Laudadio, Curriculum Resource Coordinator for English Language Arts. Yep, that's perfect.
So this is a unit that was redesigned from an existing unit that we taught in grade 7. It used to be an authors and artists unit, and it had some very strong connections to the social studies curriculum, in which they teach geographic and contemporary current events in Latin America. And we redesigned the unit to be a little more literary in nature, focused on culture and voice, so still incorporating the same text resources that were in the existing unit, but looking a little bit more through the eyes of the author and how they bring their culture and perspective to the pieces that they develop, and then culminating with our students developing their own memoir.
Is there any questions?
I just have a couple of corrections. Page 10, 12, and 14. When you're, I know it's sometimes difficult to go writing things and have them align in the boxes, but could we make an effort to at least divide them by syllable? I mean, informative, explanatory, and it ends on the R and the Y goes to the next line, just doesn't bode well
Yeah,
as an
I can fix that.
example.
Yeah, I can fix that. I see that.
I really would like to comment, there are a lot of very interesting books that are on the
Wide
independent
range.
reading level, grade level list, and the anchor text, very interesting.
Any other questions? Should we take a consensus on
Yeah.
it individually?
That's up to you.
Yes, you have to.
Yeah.
Would probably be,
Can I get a consensus on the proposed adoption of grade 7 English Language Arts, Unit 4, Culture and Voice?
yes.
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 And yes.
Thank you.
All right, B, proposed adoption of high school textbook, Sociology and You.
So we have with us Jim Francesi, our humanities coordinator, who is going to show you, and he has copies. These books will be purchased this year. We have funds in our account to do so in this school year for next year.
The books in question are here. This huge tome is the teacher's edition. This is the student edition, and there's some other resources that come with it. You folks like to get a look at things. This is Pat Taylor. She's our chairman of social studies at Lyman Hall. The books that we have currently are in pretty bad shape. It's not they were printed badly or anything like that. They're just old and they're a little outdated. There's another book that we'll be bringing to you tonight also, which is a world history and geography textbook for 10th grade. And it happened that the groups of teachers chose textbooks from the same manufacturer, the same publisher. And as a result of that, we were able to get, if we place the orders together, we're going to get some very advantageous pricing on them. Not sure what questions you might have. Pat or I can try and answer. Feel free.
So, are we doing a per student purchase or a classroom purchase and having online resources?
On these, it's a classroom purchase.
Okay.
There's basically, you generally consider 30 volumes a class set. in case the class gets large, plus you need a couple spares for normal contingencies. With the other ones, it'll be a little different, and when we get there, I can explain that to you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Karen?
Yes, I noticed that in the past, when we're looking to replace textbooks, we're always looking at the copyright date. And I noticed that the copyright date on this particular Sociology and You was 2014. So since that's the text that everyone that was on the committee felt was best for us, just to note, so that it doesn't look like we didn't review the text and we didn't try to get the most up-to-date text that aligns with our curriculum, even though it is a 2014 copyright date.
We noted that when we were going through the evaluations, but we felt that that textbook was the best geared because it's a one leveling and it would fit the widest range of students. It's also the newest edition of the book that from the old edition. We're using Sociology and You, and the resources just seem to mesh better with our program and our curriculum for that book. And the reading levels were a little more varied, and so were the supplements. So we did look at that. We were at first concerned that maybe we didn't have the most up-to-date version of it, but
No, perfectly understandable, just to note it, because a lot of times when we're looking at replacing textbooks, we look purely at the copyright date. And I think, just for administration, might want to put a note next to that, so that we remember that that's what the reason was that we chose this particular text.
Go ahead, anybody?
So, okay. There seems to be a lot of online.
There's a 6-year
Functionality with this.
subscription that each student in both sides of the town will be able to have access to.
So my question is, are all our teachers comfortable enough with a textbook that seems to be so, supported by online, in other words, interacting with online stuff? Are our teachers
You-
up for the task of?
You don't have to use the online materials. They're an additional resource. A lot of teachers prefer the online stuff, and those who don't have the textbook.
Is that a disadvantage to the kids, though, if some are getting the online experience and others aren't?
well, I think what happens at Lyman Hall is, and I'm pretty sure it's at Sheehan too, is that they use a combination of both. So that students are getting exposed to, that they have the book, because some kids, even though, especially the lower ones, like to have the book in front of them, because they can go slower. So there's a combination of using the online and the textbook.
So is there any professional development needed for the teachers or is this something that they are expected to handle on their own?
They'll probably be able to handle it, but I've already spoken with the manufacturer's rep, and she's prepared to do presentations for us for the online stuff in either of the two texts that we'll be talking about tonight.
Would there be a cost associated with that?
No, it would just be a service it's part of the sales pitch, if you don't mind the bluntness.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Did you have a question, Roxanne?
Yeah, just quickly, I'm just curious, I don't know if you know this, and probably do at least Lyman Hall. How many classes of sociology do we have at each school, and roughly do we know about how many students?
We have 4 this year.
Okay.
Looks like we're scheduled probably at least 4 next year. So we're running a little over 100 students. Actually, I think there's 5 for next year, so.
Okay, and so in those, that's an elective, I assume, for them. So is that mainly, I'm guessing 9th graders, would that be an option?
No,
Yeah, so it
these are-
starts at 10th?
It's
Yeah.
11th and 12th.
Oh, it's 11th and 12th only, okay. So that's a lot of kids when you think that it's only 2 grades, when you think about
Very
that.
popular course.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it hits a wide range of kids.
Sure, right. And I assume it's fairly the same at Sheehan. I understand you
think
probably wouldn't know
I
that.
think the Sheehan enrollment is a little lower.
Okay.
I
Not a-
don't know that it's
Yeah,
tremendous.
but it's a good popular course. Great,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
Or did you?
Well, my question was about the subscription. So we have it for 6 years. What's it gonna cost to renew that?
6 years from now, I'll be able to tell you.
Okay, they
I
didn't
don't
have
mean
a
that
projection.
sarcastically,
No, I
but
understand,
I
but
don't have any way of knowing.
what's Was it an additional fee, or did it come with the books this year?
The way we work things out, because the both texts had been selected by the committees working separately, I was able to negotiate a price with them that they gave me basically a whole price. And if you look at their proposal, it'll say, 30 books here at this cost and 30 for free. And, 30 subscriptions at this cost and 30 for free. It's a lot of silliness, honestly. But, yeah, but the bottom line is that when you look at it, the average cost of the text and/or subscription for the two books together is $67. That's a very good price for these kind of materials.
Yeah, I guess the reason I'm asking is because we're probably not going to move backwards, right? We're not
One
going to
would
just
think
go to textbooks. We're going to continue to use the online resources. In fact, I probably see us moving to not necessarily eliminating, but adopting more online resources and online textbooks.
I agree
And
with you.
so keeping that in mind, that it's not you have this textbook forever until you decide to get rid of it. The online subscription doesn't work like that. It's until they tell you that your license is up and then you can't access it.
Right.
So I was just trying to get a cost basis for that and see if there was any savings, but we got a really good deal. We can't really break it out like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could break it out, but
But
it
would
would
be
be meaningless
unrealistic
because of the
anyway,
way they price it out. We were talking a second ago, nobody pays list price for these things. So you kind of look at it and see, what are you actually paying? And for the quality of materials we're looking at, $67 is pretty competitive. We can't really complain. And I'm not suggesting, obviously, that you are complaining.
Oh,
I'm just
no.
saying, there's not much to worry about there as long as the materials themselves are good. We have done business a while ago, I want to say a year and a half, 2 years ago, we got their 8th grade U.S. history book. And some of the teachers have found the online stuff very helpful. Some of them don't feel a need for it. But that's become kind of the primary resource for the 8th grade U.S. history, and it's worked out pretty well as far as I can tell.
The thing that the board, just so you know, just piggybacking off of your comment, Shauna, is that we're planning to come back to the either at the end of this year, definitely by the beginning of next year, the instructional policy, where we took we have the policy about mission, vision, our focus areas, but then there was a regulation that went off of it, and the regulation in that the board has to decide, and I think we would advocate that where available, electronic resources need to be used by teachers. And that become part of a professional responsibility of our teaching staff. Now, we would provide the professional development, but that would be an expectation that the board would have to set and that we would be advocating for, because at some point, the tipping point of the cost for electronic resources is going to be cheaper than the hardcover book.
It's coming.
And we have to look at that, because then we're going to have a choice between getting online resources or keeping teachers in the classroom. And unfortunately, I'm going to side with keeping teachers in the classroom and getting the online resources and not getting the hardcover books, just because I think that's a smarter move. So it might be a pedagogical shift that people are going to have to make, but again, that'll be an opportunity which we'll highlight when we go over that adoption of the board regulation, which hopefully, again, either later this spring, the fall, with the best instructional strategies that we expect teachers to use in their classroom for different areas, that would be a piece that where available, if there's an online resource, the expectation that the teachers would be integrating that into their class and using it. I think we feel very firmly about that, especially knowing the cost differential that could be a significant savings for our district. And that keeps our class sizes down, keeps our programming in place, all of those things that we want to make sure we do.
Which brings me to the final part of my question, I promise. Do we know if they're going to be updating the online resources regularly?
I believe they do it on a cyclical basis, I think,
Yeah.
as things come about.
So that's just something that whenever we do something like this, that we want to be conscious of, because I know you have that really big teacher book.
Huge.
I know it's probably not what it's called, but
It's a huge book,
it's really heavy. But if that's obviously not going to be updated, but their online resources are. So if we get to 2 years down the road or 6, the teacher's not using the online resources, and now the resources online are not lining up, and that would
Well,
just be
I
something
think that
would
supports
want us
the
to be
point
aware
Dr.
of.
And I
Menzo
think
was
that's
making.
part of
Yeah.
keeping that real. And we haven't, at this point, this is a new policy to the district, a new regulation, something that we felt as an administrative team that we want to move forward with, because a lot of our DIRG districts have policies like this, have very appropriately stated policies of expectations that parents could look at and say, okay, my child should be receiving this type of instruction. And students should know as they become informed consumers at the high school level too. So that's why this all ties perfectly together.
Yeah.
And it's industry-wide. They're all either coming out with this stuff or they've got it. It's a shift. And it's a shift that teachers.
And other content areas have already gone to the shift more aggressively than others.
Yeah.
I know World Language uses the online resources. And we did get a little bit at first when parents, I know, were a little concerned they didn't have the tangible item, but go to the resource. That's transitioned, and they've made the transition. The
Well,
students have too.
Math.
Yeah.
My son, he uses his earned time to play math games that are homework, like go beyond. I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, that's
So
school stuff.
I interjected prior to this.
Sorry.
My only
Sorry.
my only thing
Oh,
would be
could-
to make sure that this, oh, I have to stand up, that's right, I've been here since we got all fancy.
We got all fancy and formal.
Fancy and formal. Hi, my,
won't be heard.
what?
You won't be heard if you're not on there, so we want to
Oh,
make sure
I know,
you're heard.
oh, I know. Oh, of course, I need to be heard. Hi, my only concern would be classroom set of 30, as there are still students who need to have a copy at home, medically fragile students, students on 504s, whatever. So keep that in mind when we order maybe only 30, we might want to up that just a little bit. Thank you.
Do you have a question, David?
No,
Do you like to comment?
I actually don't have a question, but this is a program I had used for my last 5 years in New Haven, so if you want to hear 3 minutes about what a teacher actually thinks about this program, I'd like to talk about it.
Sure, you're more than welcome to. There's the microphone.
Hi, I'm Allison Matura, mother of 2 Sheehan boys. I hold an 026, so I'm talking away from the microphone. We used in New Haven the World History and Geography book. One of the things that I absolutely loved about the online materials is you can adjust the reading level on the fly. So if you have a child at home who isn't perhaps reading at grade level, you can adjust it to approaching grade level, a very simplified version particularly for ELLs, and then at the grade level. The general Lexile level is right around 10th or 11th grade for this. And in terms of the online resources, it's so much richer than it seems. It's not just a worksheet you can print out. There's interactive materials, and as a teacher, because it's actually structured using Understanding by Design, I can go into my resources, and if I see if I have a student that is struggling with maybe a reading for information or needs some reinforcement or some reteaching, I can actually send the work directly to the student if they have their own, log in under an ID number. So and I swear Jim has not paid me to say anything about this. It's in terms
But
of.
I would.
You can buy me a cup of tea. It's something, the text itself is also online. That can be a little difficult to manage, but if you're not sure, if you're struggling trying to understand a particular paragraph, you can adjust it down yourself, you can adjust it up. And in terms of what we look at in terms of 21st century skills, it's explicit. So if we look at end of the chapter assessments or quizzes, they are explicitly 21st century and Understanding by Design. Formative and summative assessment. So I was very glad to hear that. I also think that starting it with the 8th grade, is it 8th grade? Okay. Start with 8th grade, and then if this is a program, it rolls forward. Kids that had it in 8th grade are going to say, oh, world history, we did, I know how to use this program. And so they have a facility with the actual technology. So I think this is a great idea. Thanks.
So are both texts set up like the same way as far as like the online?
Yes, I can, if you want.
Amanda, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
I was wondering if, because I know we had jumped to the world in history,
Yeah,
and I was wondering if the same setup is, because they're both the same
Gotcha.
Yes,
author,
it's a
editors,
6-year
or sorry,
subscription.
publishers.
It's I think they call it Learn Smart. It's a whole program that they're running with all their stuff, all the books that they produce. And I'm glad Allison mentioned the part about the adjustment, because I meant to and I didn't think of it. It is a very useful feature for those kids who are struggling. Teachers can assign a reading at a particular level for a kid. And the interesting thing is that the information does not change, but the sophistication of how it's addressed is tailored to meet the student's needs. It's automatic differentiation, which is very helpful for kids and very labor intensive for teachers, so it's a good thing.
Are the assessments in that, because Allison, you mentioned formative and summative. Have we looked at those assessments as related to potentially using them for our curriculum and, in terms of dropping them in? And, because I'm just looking at because are they electronic assessments, or are they paper pencil, or is there a combination to do both?
There's a test booklet that you get with it, in addition to the teacher edition. They call it a suite. You get that,
Yeah, no,
you get a bunch of
because
stuff.
I'm just curious, because we're always looking to help streamline the assessment process. And if there is an online version of the assessment, that then we could develop a patch to go either to PowerSchool, or as we move towards Enlight Watson, that the data, there's not double data entry for teachers, and it's more on-time, real-time, quick analysis of that data. I really would like to talk more about that, if that's something that we can.
I can't see why we can't talk about it.
Yeah, because I think that the more we could do this, as we collaborate with other districts and you were kind enough, Pat, to be part of the conversation with IBM, as we continue to talk to the other districts, we're looking at online resources that already have built-in assessments that then they could, because we own the license. So we could then patch that data in there, and then it gives real-time data to parents and students. And so let's talk more about that.
Sure.
Does the sociology book come with formative and summatives too?
It's the exact same setup.
That's what okay, good,
Yeah,
okay.
it's the exact same setup.
So let's talk more about that. I wrote a big assessment on my thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Are there, I feel a little awkward, I'm talking about both things at the same time here.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions about the sociology in you?
Can we, what did we do?
Wanna take consensus
Take
on-
consensus.
Yeah, I was
on,
just
uh,
I was trying to
sociology?
figure out.
Can I get consensus on the adoption of high school textbook sociology and you? Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes.
Thank you very much.
Mm.
And then, proposed adoption of high school textbook, world history and geography. Thank you so much thank you so much for sharing. Did you want to say a little?
It's kind of a similar situation. The books we have are very old and they're worn. If we don't adopt this, we're gonna have to spend money on upwards of 80 volumes of the outdated text because we don't have them anyway. It's a really bad expenditure of money to get that many very old books, so.
And they're both published by McCaw-Hill.
Mm-hmm.
There's just the publisher I use for all my college texts, and I'm wondering if there's some kind of deal for all textbooks in the future, in my head.
Well, again, we usually, if all the plans aligned and
Well, yeah.
they were recommended, then yes. But
This was
sometimes it doesn't.
serendipitous. I
Doesn't work
didn't-
out.
I didn't necessarily expect that this would be the outcome, but when I saw it, it seemed like a good idea to try to leverage it on behalf of the district, obviously.
So I just have a curiosity point. How can a book that's already published have a copyright date of 2018? I mean, is that?
It's a really good question. I don't know.
And it's in the book, I mean, just check
That's
the
what they
book.
tell us.
I'm just kidding, is that a standard?
You got me on
No,
that one.
it should be 2017. I have no idea why it's listed
Okay.
the way it is. Here's another one, if you want to get a laugh. I contacted the rep as I was preparing the paperwork for you folks, and I said, I need to know what edition these volumes are. And it took her a couple of weeks to get back to me. And she said they're both first editions, and I just bit my lip and said, okay, because we've had both books before, so I don't know how they qualify as first editions.
It could be in the, just my limited experience with copywriting and trademarking with the curriculum that we did this year, that it's all depends on if there's a minor change to any element of the materials.
Oh, I think this is pretty significant.
So then it could be a first edition because you have to do trademark pending and copyright pending. So technically, the 18 could be that it's pending, it's not approved, but I don't know, that's just,
Yeah, but you've already
that's what I've
printed it.
learned through my process. I'm just gonna share that little bit of knowledge, that nugget of knowledge and move on.
And we're
so.
grateful for the
Maybe
sharing.
maybe they just came in.
It's like buying the 2018 car in 2017.
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
I was
there we
gonna say,
go.
or
I'll go
maybe,
with that
maybe they
idea.
just,
That's
maybe they
probably
just
more
came in
logical.
under budget and ahead of schedule.
There you go, it's absolutely.
So, this history course, I do not know how people carry these books around. It's really ridiculous, but
Well,
I
that's
worry
another
about
one of the
everybody's
reasons
backs.
for the online stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know how, so what grade does it say?
That's
what-
10th grade.
This is 10th grade. There's, academic
In honors.
Academic and honors.
and honors, okay.
And the reading level matches that target audience.
This is a lot of material. They get through all this in 1 year, huh?
I doubt that they'll get through all of
Right,
it, but
so
they'll select what they need.
Yeah, so is that sort of each teacher might have their own personal passion
I
for?
certainly hope not. We have a written curriculum, and I'd hope that
Well,
they're
but
adhering to
if
it.
you're saying you're not going to get through it in 1 year anyway, I guess,
The curriculum for that course is based on themes. It's
Yep.
thematic, and so they've matched the chapters with the themes as
Okay.
they come up. So that's why we can't get through, obviously, that whole.
right, that's what I'm thinking.
And so, but then we get a good chunk of the chapters, and I know I've taught that in the past, and sometimes maybe it's a section or two for
Right.
this unit, and then it's a section and two for the next, and.
So based on your theme, you might be jumping around on
Yes,
chapters anyway, depending on the theme here. Okay, thanks.
I really like the way the text is set up, where you have the timelines and the history integrated with the geography, because I think so many times you're not thinking about that and what was going on politically and historically, and this gives you a perspective of what was going on and what the geography was at that time in history. I think
I
it's,
agree with you, and it helps with the thematic arrangement, because there are some folks that are so used to the march through time that when you try and get a theme, and it's not necessarily contiguous, it confuses them. Those things help a lot with that.
it really is very nicely set up, and I'm likening back to a former WEA president who was very concerned about making sure that when you're teaching history, the geography is integrated into it, Martin Trueheart, and I think he might have approved of this text. It integrates very nicely.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, are there PowerPoints available too for the teachers?
There
I
are,
noticed also that there were like referenced in the teachers edition certain videos. Do they have access to those too?
oh yeah, that's all.
Okay, it's all out.
And the PowerPoints, I know when you go through the resources,
Okay.
it references PowerPoints, it links you up to them, so yes,
Alright.
there are PowerPoints for those.
It's all part of this huge suite of resources that they provide.
Any additional questions?
Well, yeah, no, just an observation, Kathy, to your point, this is a copyright of 2018, but it only goes up the actual last, contemporary global issues. We stop at President Bush 2001, so go figure. That's the kicker there.
Actually, Mr. Franchese and I had a talk about this today a little
Really?
bit about, well, it's just that there's so much that
Right.
we don't cover in present time.
Right,
And so we have to start looking at it strategically as related to the new social studies standards for the state of Connecticut. We have to look at how are we going to get, not that we want to lose our responsibility of teaching the past, but we do need to get to the recent past and the present.
right, because you're missing 16 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge, a lot's happened.
And those kids weren't even born during those
Correct. Yeah, think
16,
about that.
So, so we've kind of, it's a concern that we have,
Well,
what?
Yeah.
What?
It's,
The idea that when President Bush was president and that book ended, that these kids weren't alive, just like,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, I just.
So I
got
mean,
old.
that's we had a very thoughtful conversation today, and we were kind of like, well, how do we, so we have to think about it, and it's going to, if Mr. Votto were here tonight, social studies is near and dear to him, and he's already at home not feeling well, so I don't want to make him feel worse.
Don't make him sick.
But the fact is that there are certain things that they hold on to. It's like an English teacher with Shakespeare if they love it,
Right.
or a particular poem that they love, or whatever it may be. We all have those passions, but I
Yes.
think we do owe it to our children to let them know that the world, the
And the-
history when they were maybe.
But,
and the
just,
standards have been revised to account for that.
Yeah.
With U.S. history is what we were discussing, and state standards have high school level U.S. history starting at about 1870. Teachers are typically still starting at the colonial era. It's a little out.
It's interesting. So,
Yeah.
but that was a
But
good
as-
point. Good pickup.
well, as a mother of two sons that truly their passion for history got ignited through Lyman Hall, really. I mean, especially one of my sons. So, but one thing I've learned is that if you ignite that passion, they'll find their own way, to learn and get exposed to whatever when it comes to history. I mean, I think that's probably true in any subject matter. When you ignite the passion in a student, they'll find their way through it. But that struck a chord with me. But then I spent 5 minutes. There's a thing on Chaco Canyon, and nobody knows about Chaco Canyon, and I'm shocked that it's in here. And I've been to Chaco Canyon, so that's weird on an ancient civilization, So it's kind of strange, but it's all good.
Any other questions, folks?
All right, can we take consensus on the adoption of high school textbook World History and Geography? Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Amanda, I know we have some guests in the audience who might want to make some comments, so I didn't want you to go to adjournment just
Yeah,
yet.
sure.
Thank you so much for coming.
I'm gonna
Yep, those are
grab
all.
those in a
You
hand
need
truck.
a hand cart for these.
You need your waist belt.
Thanks, Jim.
No problem. Thank you for your help.
No worries.
So there's 2 pages coming around. One is the retake, redo guidelines that you're very familiar with, so that nobody had to pull it up on screen. I just had a printed copy. The other one is a email that I received from administration as a follow-up to concerns that I raised regarding the third marking period. I'll speak in general about them. You could read the email in detail, but since it has my son's name and teachers' names, I'll just speak generally about them. I was concerned about the lack of grades that were in Power School. So on March 23rd, I met with administration and I raised my concerns.
Could you just do me a favor? I apologize to interrupt, but clarify which administration.
I'm
because
sorry.
We're all here.
She and
and-
administration.
okay.
Sorry, you're
No,
right.
no worries.
I got to
I
do
just
that.
did.
So I met with she and administration and Joe's guidance counselor. And at that point, there were only 2 grades in one of his classes, and the marking period was ending on the 29th. There should be 9 grades at the end of the marking period. There was one of his 5 courses that had the 9 grades.
Say that again, there was one?
One. There was another one that had 4, another one that had 6. There were a couple that had assignments in there, but the grades weren't posted yet, so they were going to get close. And the one that I was concerned about the most is the one that had only 2 grades and nothing else in there. So the first paragraph speaks to the fact that administration at Sheehan discussed the concern with teachers and stressed to them the policy that they should have the 9 grades per term, and that they were going to raise to central administration the suggestion to write a district report so that they could better monitor what's not being, I guess they call it have the IT department create a lean process so that all secondary schools can utilize it moving forward.
I'm not sure what the purpose of that is.
Well, we don't know either, so we'll get that clarification
Okay.
from administration.
Thank you.
Yeah. The second paragraph, basically, my concern about that is that my son was doing multiple retakes, and I never signed a form. And I wouldn't have signed the form if I had the opportunity to. There was, when I raised the concern to school-based administration, they went back and spoke with the English department, who was under the impression that the form was optional. So once it was clarified that it was not optional, then the English department started using the form, and now I've signed a form since then. And I can talk in more detail offline if anybody needs more about that. The last paragraph talks about my favorite, the use of technology. I've had many instances over the course of the year to try to ask teachers to use technology in the classroom. I guess the last sentence in this one says it all. As I stated in our meeting, I cannot require teachers to provide feedback electronically. So what I'm asking for, what I've been asking for, is for students who choose and have a preference to use technology to be allowed to use technology to submit their work, as well as to get feedback electronically. In a block schedule, it's very often if a student has a class on day A, they may have a study hall on day B. If the feedback is available electronically, they would have something to do in study hall. So that would be very helpful. I will point out that I also have a third grader going into fourth grade. Starting in fourth grade next year, teachers will be having fourth graders submit electronically and provide feedback electronically. All teachers in Moran, and my son went through Moran during this process, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, he submitted electronically, and he got feedback electronically. I'm not asking for anything that isn't happening in other schools. So these are the 3 issues that we spoke about. Those are the only ones I'm bringing to you tonight. I have another meeting, 11 o'clock on Friday, that I'm trying to arrange to make sure that I can meet, and I'll be back next month with additional issues after I follow the protocol and raise them and see how far I get.
It's her meeting, never mind.
Sorry, habit. Can I just, it seems like you have 3 issues. Can you just bullet point them for me? Because I want to make sure I have them exactly correct. I know one was the use of technology and the feedback. One was, it seemed to be there was an issue with the redos and retakes. There was some inconsistency, and I'm not sure, I felt like there was another. So if you could just bullet point your 3 issues.
I think the underlined parts of the email, those
On
will,
so the
number
underlined-
of grades per marking period.
That makes sense. On seeing England for the first time isn't isn't a specific issue that we're addressing.
That would be the non-use of the retake redo
That's
form,
what I'm looking for. Non-use of the redo retake form. Okay.
which is now being used after I raised the issue.
But we don't know, not to interrupt, but what my concern is with that is it consistently being used? And I don't expect you to answer that question, but that would be a question I'd ask of that administration is, now, that was a hole for the English department. How do we know? It might be a hole for the history department or, you know, whatever. So I would probably want to know what is the consistent behavior.
And use of technology.
Great point.
Okay. So the 3 issues are the non-use of redo retake form, the number of grades being submitted per marking period, and the use of technology. Right? I just wanted to
Yep.
make sure I was clear. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to adjourn this meeting.
Is
sorry.
there any other questions? Anything else? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want you to.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I didn't want to not have you speak if you didn't want to speak.
I
so I'm
thank you.
sorry.
My name is Jennifer Parmalee. I have 2 children, one in Miranda, one in Sheehan. And my one in Sheehan is an IEP child. I'm looking for some clarification, if not tonight, but in time, of the regular ed teacher's role in special education. I'm finding there's a huge disconnect from the way things were being done at Parker Farms to Moran. They were pretty consistent. Regular ed and special ed had a dual role in making sure my child's education was sound. And in the short time I've been in Sheehan, I've already run into 3 issues where I am not having the regular ed teacher communicate to the parent, take responsibility, and it's often being just said, talk to the case manager. Don't worry, the case manager's gonna take it. Well, there's reasons why we have specialty teachers, especially in the high school years. And my special education manager is wonderful. He's great. But I just don't know how he can wear so many hats and how that will adjust to my son's education. I'm finding high levels of stress. I'm finding kickback. And just a huge amount of anxiety. I have to go pull information. I have emails unanswered. I have the case manager will do it constantly. I've gone to guidance. I've gone to the assistant principal. The school psychologist knows about this, and Patty Fishbein has been informed as well. I don't know where else to go, so I'm here.
Is it with one particular teacher or is it across the board?
I'm finding it's more across the board.
Okay.
At first, I thought I had this problem within the first couple of weeks with one teacher, and then we had another teacher, and now very recently a third.
Can I assume, I want to be careful here. Can I assume you follow the chain of command in terms of your concerns and how you've addressed them at the building-based level?
For 2, but the third is so recent, I
Uh-huh.
have not gone to that next step yet.
Okay.
But that is something that will be followed through with the third.
Yeah, because that's really important. Obviously, the board is always here to hear any concerns that any family may be having in any school or in any situation, but we do want to make sure that chain of command is followed. That's really, really important, but it sounds like you're doing that.
I'm working on it. I
Yeah.
admit I'm not proficient at it yet.
Yeah.
So I am working at it, and I'm just really trying to find, the largest thing of concern is how we've gone from 2 schools doing it consistently.
I understand that
So,
frustration, right?
If there is something different at the high school level, please let me know.
Yeah.
I'm all here to learn as well.
Right. No, but I want to make sure your concerns have been, you've clearly articulated them to your son's
Yes.
your son's guidance. It could be guidance counselor, could be assistant principal, and then also obviously involve the principal if you're not getting effective information and it's not satisfying your needs.
I understood.
Yeah,
And
that's
like
important.
I said, I'm not exactly 100% proficient.
Well, there's a
on
lot more
stuff.
layers at the high school level, and there's more resources available at the high school level, potentially. There's more kids, it's structured a little differently. But you should always feel comfortable. Well, first, your first line of defense always has to be building bays. But you should be comfortable as a parent to be able to go to the assistant principal, guidance counselors, your caseworker. You sound like you have a good relationship with that individual. That's great. But it sounds like to me it's not getting tied together, so there's a disconnect somewhere.
There is a
Or
disconnect
several
that I'm
disconnects, it sounds like.
It really is, and I'm just really feeling the most out of the loop that I've ever felt.
And that can't happen. That no parent should ever feel out of any loop when it involves your children. That's unacceptable. So I would urge you to try to make you need to meet I would suggest, I don't know if I'm off base here, but with your caseworker, you seem like you have a comfort level with this individual. That's great. But you need to meet with that caseworker along, maybe your son needs to be involved. That's your call. I don't know. That's up to, but with.
Not at this time.
That's fine. With the assistant principal that works specifically with your son based on the last name and who gets what. I don't know if you're familiar, if you know who your assistant, okay, you do, that's good. I would urge that a meeting needs to be held immediately, because if you're feeling this disconnected, I have to believe your son is feeling disconnected or starting to feel disconnected.
Yes.
And that's a very vulnerable age, and we don't want that ever to happen.
And there's exactly why I'm fighting.
Mm.
And so, like I said, I don't mean to step out of chain of command.
Right.
Or, I'm not gonna sit here and name drop here.
Right. No need. I think your points have been very well articulated, and I feel your pain. I really do. I feel it very deeply. So I would like to see you take that initial step. And, this venue is always available in terms of an open meeting, but, we are talking about things that could, are personal. And there are opportunities to go offline, but that doesn't mean they're not addressed or taken seriously. But I don't want you to feel like you have to come to a board meeting to have to talk about personal matters. That's always an option.
Right.
But, feel free to reach out to any one of us. But I would like to see that happen for you, is that chain of command.
Absolutely.
And I will be very disappointed if in fact you do that and you don't find some resolution along the way. And I think as a board, and I think also as central office administration, that would be something that we would all want to know about.
Thank you. There have been some
and-
small wins.
Yeah,
But-
and Miss Parmalee, I have to say, has always been willing to reach out to me through a variety of means. And she knows that I'll call her no matter where I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I just also want to echo what Ms. McKay is saying, is that I did hear you say that you went to guidance, you went to assistant principal, you went to the special ed department head, and the school psychologist.
Yes.
So
So
I think
you've made significant attempts.
And the reason the school psychologist is in there is he does have a pull time. So there's somebody who's very, very involved in my son's weekly activities.
Good.
Yep.
That's important. Yeah.
Mrs. Parmalee, I just wanted to let you know too, I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Personnel, so if you need any information on the right way to navigate or who's next in the chain of command, and if you'd like to CC me in on any of the written communications that you have, I can certainly assist you in knowing the right steps and where to go, and can help you resolve things if you aren't finding satisfaction as well.
I appreciate that, and thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I could just say a few words as the Director of Pupil Personnel Services and as a parent of a student with disabilities, I appreciate your concerns very much. I'm sorry for the experience that you've had with Sheehan. You're welcome to call me at any time. We've worked together in the past, and I think we've got a positive working relationship. John Goodison is our coordinator of special education for high school. As you mentioned, Patty Fishbein is the department head. We will be following up on this, and we will do right by your son.
I thank you both, and thank you both for the time that
And
we've
thank
had
you for
our
having the courage to
conversations.
come and talk to us.
Yes.
I really appreciate that on a personal level. I know that's not always easy, but we are a friendly group. We're good people.
I didn't mean to
But-
put you on the spot, but I
But-
didn't want you to go home feeling like you didn't have your voice for your son.
I appreciate that, I really do.
And I hope,
Yeah.
I hope you come back and let us know, that things were resolved or not. So
Yeah.
that
Keep us in the
it's
loop if you
important.
can.
We don't know, we can't help.
I thank you again. As Dr. Menzo said, I've been vocal in the past.
No,
That's fine.
hey,
Don't be embarrassed
come
by
on.
that.
Hey,
And
You
so,
know, You're an
We-
advocate for your child. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we get along.
It's your job.
I mean, seriously.
we've spent some time discussing some things, and I appreciate the openness of a lot of members here.
Absolutely.
And Jen, just one more thing, just an FYI, like, in terms of implementation of accommodations on IEP page 8, teachers do sign off, general ed teachers do sign off on those, that they're aware and that they're responsible to implement the accommodations on the students' IEPs within the general ed setting. And they are also listed as service implementers for specific IEP goals and objectives on page 8. So there is an accountability for who is responsible for what component of that IEP in that IEP, and we can review that with you.
Thank you, because if my memory serves, that is one thing that definitely shifted through the transition. And again, I've never seen so much on a case manager that it worries me that the effectiveness is going to be lost. So everybody has their specialty. I appreciate the education that teachers have to go through, especially in the high school level. You know, you are history, you are math, you know, and there's only so much a general person can do in that kind of skill. And I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good point.
I just also want to follow up for Tammy too. I didn't comment per se, but that your comments are concerning for a variety of reasons, but I also want to make sure, and I know you follow the chain of command just because I know you, and obviously the emails tells me that you follow the chain of command, but I am concerned that policies are not being met, it appears, potentially at Sheehan. So that's a problem. And also, it raises red flags for me. I don't, do we have these same kind of issues at Lyman Hall? We don't know, but I trust the administration will look into that.
Obviously, with the information presented on all fronts tonight, I know with a couple of scenarios I'm more intimate in terms of having been actually involved in meetings at Sheehan High School. So this one in particular that was brought forward, these recent ones, will be touching base with administration.
I figured. I didn't mean to gloss over Tammy, but I
just want to follow up also. I think you have to remember that there's only so many times the average parent will go and try to resolve an issue before they just give up. I'm not going away. You're stuck with me. I've been here. This is my 10th year and I have 9 to go. You know how it rolls. I think I looked it up, and my first email on food service went to Chairman Hennessy.
Okay, there you go.
So you know I'm going to be here. But do you really expect a parent to start at ground zero for every single issue? It will wear them down. I mean, I'm walking in with 2 new issues on Friday at 11 o'clock, 2 different teachers than what are in the email that you already have. And what's going to be next week, or what's going to happen this week that I have to address next week. I mean, it's just, and it's not a mastery-based learning thing. I don't want people to think that this is all because of mastery-based learning. This is instructional practice. And mastery-based learning may be getting blamed for some of this because there's now more structure around what the expectations are. But this isn't because we have a retake, redo policy. It's because there is a policy that teachers are being expected to follow.
Well, it's putting a light on it. If somebody isn't doing what is the policy, then it's going to, I understand what you're saying, it's going to come across. So obviously, we need to look into a few things. So.
Yeah, no, by all means, you're here.
So now I'm back as parent of an IEP student. I have a 10th grader with an IEP that I'm struggling with the exact same issues, which is lack of implementation of his accommodations in the gen ed classroom. Jen and I are lucky enough to share the same case manager, who we both think kind of walks on water. But the expectations on our case managers is actually to provide the accommodation. So, as an example, if one of my son's accommodations is that the objective for the lesson must be made explicitly clear to him and the teacher must check for understanding. There are multiple ways you can do that. It can be printed on a handout that can be given out. It could be written on a board. It could be a verbal check for understanding. That's not the job of the case manager. That's just good instructional practice in a classroom. Every child should know, what am I going to know and what am I going to be able to do at the end of this class? So in terms of running things up the chain of command, I know that Jen and I have had very, very similar experiences where you have multiple issues related to a single IEP, and John and Rob have been nothing but fantastic to deal with. I don't have a sense of comfort that building leadership has as much investment into the special ed department because we are so bifurcated. And in fact, I brought a copy, I'm sorry, I didn't make copies for everyone. For Standard 6, for Indicator 7 on our NEASC, makes this problem absolutely explicit. And one of the things the NEASC study found was, sorry, as a result of the disconnect between regular and special education teachers, the school is struggling to deliver services in core classes in a collaborative manner. So I think, as a general sense, gen ed teachers say, well, that's the job, it's a SPED kid. That's the job of the case manager in the SPED department. Whereas the case managers in the SPED department say, these are things that should be part of your normal instructional practice. It's kind of like if you have to have an accommodation for something that's a standard best practice in a classroom, there's a disconnect somewhere. So I'm wondering, do we have like a leadership committee to look at this indicator in particular? And what is NEASC doing? Because their recommendation, sorry, new contacts and glasses. Define the expectations and roles for special educators and classroom teachers in the regular education classroom. That's a big one. And then ensure that special educators participate in differentiating instruction for special education students and modifying curriculum where necessary. Well, many of our kids don't need modified curriculum, but in terms of having a district-wide understanding of these are the responsibilities of the gen ed teacher. And as you said, they are signatories to those IEPs. But it's not being implemented in the majority of classrooms that I'm having experiences with. And I don't think it's teachers being willful. I just think it's a corporate culture of we've never done this before. So that's something that's of concern to me. Oh, so I absolutely support, what are we gonna do about this? Maybe that's the disconnect. Maybe that's a way we can solve sort of IEP 504 parents always feel we're in, my experiences anyway, and from the IEP and 504 parents that I'm friendly with, it's often a sense of we are in conflict with administration rather than collaboration. My personal experience, I cannot speak for anyone else, is I have felt obstructed and not listened to on many occasions. Not from John and Rob. Not from John and Rob at all. They are wonderful supporters and evangelists and advocates for our kids. I have nothing but great things to say. But maybe that feeling of obstruction or conflict is a result of longstanding district culture. I mean, we have so many kids that are differently abled in inclusive classrooms now. So that's my opinion about that. I have one specific question, and I don't know if that can be addressed here. This relates in particular to struggling to make sure that the accommodations of my child are met in the gen ed classrooms. Okay, everybody get ready to cringe. It involves lesson plans. What is the district policy on the writing of lesson plans? I have the printout from online which says teachers are to write daily lesson plans for an overview of what they're doing in the classroom. My experience is that is not happening. So if my child requires an accommodation, notes ahead of time, graphic organizers. If the teacher does not explicitly plan for that, how do they know to walk in with the materials they need to support my child in the classroom? So I'm getting very mixed messages. It says here, each teacher is expected to maintain written lesson plans that provide an overview of the intended instruction for each school day. Okay, the basics. What's the objective? What are you doing? How are you going to assess it? But that's not happening. So I can't be sure that the teacher is prepared to meet the accommodations that my child is legally entitled to have. And I get one answer from building administration and one answer from district policy. So that's clarification I would like.
Well, we agree with the clarification needed, and that goes back to the policy I mentioned earlier, which talks about, it has a little bit more detail to it, because that's a very general statement. Your expectations for what that means, my expectations might be very different than what another person's might be. So the idea is that in this new revised regulation that we're working on, there was a whole section, and we had a preview of it, and then we pulled it back because we needed more work on it, but about the expectation about lesson plans. Being more detailed, more explicit, so that it wasn't left to the interpretation of the reader, rather than what that states. Because again, the interpretation of that could be an overview, could be that they have the unit plan from the curriculum office, and that would be, they would consider that to be their overview, potentially. I'm not saying that in everybody's mind that is.
I hear you,
So
but
we
this
need
does
to be
say
able to-
daily.
Well, and again, they could take that and they can, again, there could be ways that you could slice and dice it. We agree there's ambiguity to that. And so that's really where we want to get this regulation, revised regulation, to be more specific. Potentially offering a template, because as we move towards establishing learning targets, and making sure learning targets, the students are aware of their learning targets, it ties seamlessly to that whole connection as you move down the mastery-based learning route. Now, again, we don't want to have the, like Tammy mentioned earlier, that we don't want this to be, oh, well, now we have to do this because of mastery-based learning. No, it's best instructional practice. And that's why the policy is about instructional practices and best instructional practice, not about mastery-based learning. It's about best instructional practices. So we need to put those two together, but that has been, we started a conversation mid-year, and so now we're coming back to that because we know that that is not clear enough.
Is there some district or a building-wide, and I don't know how it's done at Lyman Hall, I'm only familiar with Sheehan. It says plans are to be made available for an administrator or an evaluator to see. I have been told by an administrator in the building, they only look at them if parents complain.
Again, I cannot speak to that because we haven't had a tremendous amount of issue around this topic. But I think, again, as we become more engaged in best instructional strategies, because I think that's really our focus, I think this is a good conversation to be had, but I think it changes at different levels. But this has not been a conversation in my 8 years here that we've engaged in detail. So I think that'll be part of our process, is to look at that more closely, and also looking at that being part of the regulation. What is the expectation? What is a reasonable expectation? And again, I think if we look at it in reference to the whole idea of the learning targets and the expectations, daily expectations, and that is part of what they're collecting their formative information on. It's hard to have a class and collect formative data on a regular basis without knowing where you need to go. So we need to tie those two together, which right now it's not as connected, which it wouldn't be because we're not there, but we are moving in that direction for the fall.
And, I think mastery-based learning is a great way to go. But my concern now, stepping aside, is from the teacher side of it, as the parent, is my son will be graduated by then. So in the meantime, do I have 2.5 more years of struggling to say, if you cannot you're not providing the accommodations for my child?
Well, you have two different issues, and we talked about your one issue. I did meet with you and Jonathan regarding, and my recommendation was that Jonathan, with the special ed department, which I know offer professional development for the staff at Sheehan, in the area of regular ed teachers better understanding IEPs and better understanding their appropriate general education requirements to a special ed student. So I'm assuming, and again, we were, that is in the plan to be developed. I know we offered a variety of different options for that to occur. I know we brainstormed them together, but my comment was that I know that each school has professional development funds allocated for release time, that Jonathan and his staff could offer that, and I believe he's scheduled some of those times already, where he and his staff could offer teachers on a rotating basis embedded professional development during the school day, either during class time or planning time, whatever it may be, most likely during class time, and having that occur. And I know that he's already planned that. So that's the first step. I also have to say, as I sit here and listen, something that comes to my mind is that there's a discrepancy between Lyman Hall and Sheehan when it comes to their school rankings. And it's not because of the overall amassed number of points based on all the 12 or 13 indicators at the top of the report card. It's based on the significant discrepancy between the performance of special ed students and non-disabled peers. So obviously that is a focus of our concern. It's not just a focus of special ed, but that has to be the focus of all teachers. They're all of our students. I have to say it somewhat bothers me that I hear this, because in my career as an 8th grade English language arts teacher in Willimantic, where we were the inclusion team, which was so wrong at that time, but it was right at that time, that was what people were doing, they were all our cherubs. They were all my little ones that we were there, big ones, because most of them were taller than me. But the thing is, doesn't take much, but the thing is, they were our kids. and you didn't separate that that's an IEP student, that's a 504. I didn't know. We were kind of form blind, basically, because we just assumed everybody needed good instructional practice. And I think that goes back to the several points, is that this is about instructional practice. But we need to continue to layer the resources. Only up until recently, you might not be aware of this, but remember, Sheehan never even had EL students in their school up until about 3 years ago. We used to send all the EL students to Lyman Hall, which was a significant OCR issue waiting to happen. And we resolved that issue. And so we had to offer professional development in the area of EL students for the staff there. And we continue to need to do that for all of our staff, because our number of different nationalities increases all the time. So we do need to develop this, and I know Jonathan shook his head that the planning has been put in place, and that, because that was, again, my humble recommendation is that obviously we have a capacity challenge that we need to continue to work. And I do hear your comment that I don't think it's a malicious or there's malintent. I think it's just
corporate culture. It just
and it
hasn't
might be
been
a
done.
nervousness too, that oftentimes when you're asked to do things that you might not be certain about, that you don't know how to respond other than, in the way that maybe is happening. So we need to help develop those professionals, because every person in our school is an asset that we need to utilize for students. So I do appreciate, that, and I know that that's something that, we discussed, and I know that's been followed up upon. But I would encourage, the lesson planning piece. I know that's something the board will be seeing. And I appreciate you bringing it to light tonight, because when I present it, or Carrie or Cindy, the three of us present it, it won't look like we're saying it for the first time and like we have 5 heads. So it's nice to hear it from the parent voice, that that's something of interest from a parent perspective too, not just from the people at central office who don't understand all the time what's going on, but from actually a parent who has children in our system.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Menzel, I have a question for you.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Do we have coaching going on at the high school?
We have department heads that were trained in coaching, and they have done some coaching. We need to continue to work in that area. I think there's constantly evolving opportunities in that role.
Because this just sounds like a kind of an area where coaching would be applicable as an immediate kind of remedy for this situation. We have targeted persons, targeted teachers that we know could possibly use some coaching in this area.
And yes, and Jonathan and I and Rob have talked about that. Again, our goal, based on the information we learned this evening, is to have a follow-up meeting, as I would assume all the board would want me to, as superintendent, and charge me with the responsibility to meet with the Sheehan administration to discuss the concerns that have been presented, and provide a feedback.
And Tammy, I just want you to know that I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, because I think personally for me, one of my general concerns is that we're not necessarily aware. I mean, you guys do a great job, and you have a lot to oversee, but sometimes we don't know that this stuff, because it hasn't reached the top level yet, isn't being followed through on. And I think that while you didn't get as an extensive of a response, I think part of the reason is probably because we all want some more information on it, not from you, but from everybody as a group. But I speak for myself, and I'm sure others will echo, that it's not gone unnoticed, and we're paying attention to it.
That's right.
Yes.
This is very concerning to me. Having had a child go through this district, requiring extensive supports and many planning and placement team meetings, this is not acceptable.
I think those were my words, actually, in the
in
meeting with
any-
Mrs. Maturo.
in any
So I
way.
channeled you, because that, I
yes,
think I
this-
said that about 5 times.
This is not acceptable.
My head was about to
This is a
pop
legal
off my body.
document. We are supposed to be following what has been written in this document, and these things are supposed to be complied with. And this is very concerning, because these children need the supports that are agreed to in that planning and placement team meeting, in that IEP. And if that's not being delivered, that is a big, big problem.
Absolutely.
So I would like to know how we are exactly going to address these things, so that we make sure that we are in compliance with what has been agreed to.
If I can just echo your concern, any instance of potential noncompliance obviously creates the utmost concerns for obvious reasons, because we're putting somebody at risk for being denied FAPE, and we're actually
Exactly,
putting
right.
the district in a libelous position.
You're exactly right.
I will be following up tomorrow morning with Shane administration on this.
Yes, this is a great concern to me, especially considering the percentage of students in our district that have been identified as needing these types of supports. You know, I'm hoping that this is encapsulated in this particular culture, because I have not heard of any other concerns. But with this in mind, I think we really need to look at making sure that the IEP is being followed to the letter.
I agree.
We totally agree. And Mr. Mancusi, whenever I get something brought to my attention, potentially not necessarily in the chain of command, but we don't go without responding to individuals, immediately I connect with Mr. Mancusi, because then he can then deploy the appropriate person to that family to address the situation. And if necessary, he and I meet with parents because we feel that it's important, and we will do that. And when I say if it's necessary, not because to the parent, but to the fact that we feel the responsibility because it hasn't been handled at the appropriate level.
Right.
Rob and I are meeting with families and discussing it at all hours of the day to make certain that we do that. The thing is that I think that the comment about corporate culture and culture, that is a concern, because that is something that I don't believe we see consistently across the district, these concerns.
That's good.
Because we would be hearing about them
Yeah.
more frequently, and I think that we would, especially at the elementary level. I think that you tend to hear more at that level because parents are less worn down potentially, as was mentioned earlier. And I think there's tremendous amount of work being done at that level, and even at the middle school. Are there pockets?
Even what you're saying, Sal, it makes sense, because the expectation has been set for you folks, and it had been met, those expectations that were established, they were met at the elementary and at the middle school, so that supports.
Yeah, and I think that and I think Rob would concur with this, as part of the focus monitoring plan, we did call out as a district our continued desire to work with regular ed teachers to better understand their role in the special ed environment. So that was called out last year, that you all saw that report. It was one of the bullets that we said for all staff. That was a focus. So I think we need to continue to address that, maybe do a little bit more targeted intervention, as we would say, for our students at different levels or different locations. But that is a continued thing. And to be honest, I think it's a challenge that as students pass through the grades, I think most districts would see that difference, because I think there is just a difference sometimes in the services that are provided, but it shouldn't be as stark as this. The other thing I do want to remind people, and I know I'm just bringing up, I'm just being transparent. We did add additional special educator at Sheehan. So we did add a certified staff member to help with the resources there, because the board, we reallocated resources to make that happen last year. So we've tried to add additional services in the event that the regular ed teachers felt that there wasn't enough support. That came from Rob and his department as a recommendation, and then we supported it, and you as a board supported it financially with the budget that was adopted last spring. So
we have very manageable caseloads at the high schools. They're between 15 and 18 across the district. I will tell you, as I reviewed with you last January, and I've gone around to several of the schools to review our focus monitoring plan with them, because I like to talk about this more than anything else. Our number one belief as a focus monitoring team, which consisted of 12 people throughout the district in various roles, is that all students are general ed students first. Special ed students are general ed students first who require specialized instruction. And that is our mantra as a department this year, to have shared ownership for their instructional programming, for their development. So it is a message we are sending out loud and clear.
I think the key thing, though, that you just said, Rob, and it's something that we all need to, we need to work towards and further integrate in a meaningful way, an authentic way, as well as a documented way, is you said our department. You said that in our department, this is the mantra of our department. That's special ed. That needs to be the mantra of our district.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I apologize.
So, no, I didn't,
no.
no,
But I
and
think
it wasn't, I'm
that's
not, that
clear.
wasn't a criticism of you at all. That wasn't,
Yeah.
no, that wasn't a criticism whatsoever. That was something that, I know we've had, and I know Cindy, you've been part of these conversations too, is that we've had the personal conversations that that's the mantra of the district. So we need to make sure that that's embedded within everything that we say and do. So I appreciate you for saying that, not as a criticism, but thank you for bringing that
And
forward.
it's our number one belief on our focus monitoring plan, which is a
Absolutely.
public document that we submitted to the State Department.
But I think,
From a personal level, I apologize,
No,
Dr.
no.
Menzel, but if I can add from a personal level, that I can actually see the difference in my child. And when I see the teachers in special ed departments and paras working together, I see a different child coming home from school.
correct.
I know that that mantra is exactly what needs to be done because you live it.
Yep.
So I have a question actually for you, Rob. Does the district climate survey address the feeling of connectedness between the parents and the teachers?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's something that we do monitor and we'll be able to see. Do we ask if it's a parent of a student with an IEP or a 504?
I believe so. There is a question in there.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to see, I'm wondering a little bit here if it's not, obviously it's an exacerbated issue for you, but I'm wondering if the philosophy extends beyond just for parents with IEP and 504 students, but if maybe there's a culture of disconnectedness between high school students at Sheehan and the teachers and the parents. I think it would be interesting to find out.
And I think that that's the next piece that we were going to bring to the board the end of the spring, the survey results.
Yeah.
I think that we're at a point where this is our, oh gosh, I'm going to be wrong, so I won't say the number of years, but it's been a few years now that we've been under the SEED model that we've been doing the district climate surveys. I think 1 year prior we had to do it, but it was like a kind of a pilot year for the state. So I think we're either year 3 or 4. I think we need to refine our approach to that also. And we've been talking internally, and that was something we started looking at last summer, trying to add, we got away from using the percentage of respondents to actually having focus areas based off of that, because initially it was recommended by the state that the first few years you use percentage of respondents as your measure or your baseline. We moved away from that, and I think we need to continue to refine how the plans more accurately reflect the reality of the data collected. And I think it's just a natural transition, but that's a goal that we'll work on with the administrators, especially this spring and in over the summer when we have our administrative retreats, is not just about the school climate plans, but also then about their improvement plans. Because their improvement plans, which I think certain levels are in a different place just developmentally in developing their plans, but I think some are more focused on the needs of their students than more generalizing the data. And I think that it's a matter of just getting that sophistication. It's not that there's not a desire. I think it's just helping them better understand the expectations and also that the data is, we've had that kind of nebulous data scenario going on, especially at the high school with this, they had the SBAC, then they had the SAT. And so now that we know we're sticking with the SAT, at least for this commissioner and governor, that we at least have something that we can continue with, but having that transition year. But I think that that's a key concern. And also, I shouldn't say it's a concern, but it's also an opportunity to expand everyone's awareness.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the presentation. I know Rob and Melissa are working hard on it.
Yep.
I also think that I know you can't avoid the district climate survey pop-up on the screens, which is wonderful.
It's
oh,
over.
It's done. You can,
Yeah.
you can safely visit the
It was
website
Friday.
again.
It was over.
But I think that maybe for next year, and it just came to me now, is that we can stress to parents the importance of taking that survey. Because if I wasn't on the board, right, I would not know why do you want me to do, I would exit out just as a natural habit. But knowing that it's what shapes my school district and that my voice as a parent
Well,
can
it
now help
needs to
shape
really
the
be
district.
what shapes the school.
Yeah.
So what you learn, and we've all learned, that the best message needs to come closest to the child.
Mhm.
So it needs to really come from from teacher and administrator at the building level. Me saying, fill out the survey, I'll do
No,
it.
yeah, and you have.
But the fact is, we need to really, the schools that have taken ownership of it, which
Mhm.
we've had several this year, who have truly taken significant ownership of it, I know they're going to get a ton more responses than other schools. So we have to continue to foster that in a variety of creative ways. But again, the thing is that, again, having the building administrator, and that goes back to having more nuanced, more detailed plans that are communicated, and the administrators need to work in that area, and I think we're all prepared for that, and I think that it's I don't think any of them would disagree with that comment.
Mhm.
I think they realize that it's the next step.
Yeah, but I think that hearing it from us, at least will put the onus on the building administrators and the teachers to say, oh, this is something that's not just a voluntary kind of thing. It's important and we should push it.
Absolutely.
You know.
Can I make one more comment?
Yeah, sure.
As cranky as I get about not having my son's needs met, it's really important to me that, particularly our case manager, and the people who are helping any IEP or 504 kid on the day-to-day basis, has a sense that they have agency. You don't want to say it, but a kid with an IEP is kind of first among equals because we have legal obligations to that child that we don't have for a kid in the gen ed. So I'm just reflecting our case manager, again, who I think is absolutely fabulous. They're on the same contract as the teachers, and they have no supervisory or instructive or they cannot command someone on their same contract. Look, you must do this. And I think it creates a sense of, look, I have responsibilities to this child under the IEP. I don't see that this is what's happening in the gen ed classroom in terms of providing these accommodations. I have to tell you that you have to do that. That's a hard conversation to have, even among peers. And so especially if you have someone who's a little newer or new to the building or new to the system, it's hard to be able to develop those relationships. And Rob is right. In terms of caseload, we're really lucky that no one, I think, has anyone over 20. But if we have 20 kids, that could be 70 teachers. So in terms of, I really want our case manager and the school psychologist that handles my child to be able to walk into building administration's office and say, I have a problem. I'm working with a gen ed teacher, and I'm feeling frustrated that they're not implementing the gen ed accommodations. That's hard because as adults, we sort of feel like that's tattling on each other if you're on the same contract. I don't know how to solve that problem, and I can't speak for our case manager or our school psychologist, but that's definitely the vibe we get. Again, also tell you from my experience, every time I have to pick up the phone or call John or call Rob, I always feel like, oh, my kid is now the troublemaker. I'm the parent that causes problems. That's a real feeling for us. And I calculated with my older son, who had a 504, who also wasn't being followed. I think since they came in through the Yalesville system, I've been to dozens of 504 and IEP meetings. That's kind of unacceptable to me as a parent because it's wasting my time resources when we have to address the same issue over and over and over again. So, but you don't want anybody to hate you. I want to find a way to feel that we're being listened to because we know our kids better than any teacher could possibly know. And for me, there's also a sense that for building administration, they're looking at the special ed department head as, okay, well, if you're having a problem with a classroom teacher, you have to deal with the special ed department. And I don't have a sense, again, I'm repeating myself, I don't have a sense that the building administration says, these are our kids, and we have absolute responsibility to every kid in the building. Although I can see why they might say, well, we have specialists in the building as well, but I need to feel that building administration is saying, I can help you with that problem. And I don't feel that way. So. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much for speaking, and Sal, if you, or sorry, Dr. Menzo, if you wouldn't mind giving us an update on how everything pans out.
Yeah, well, our first step is to meet with Sheehan administration, and from there, we'll take one step at a time, we'll take one issue at a time,
Yep.
and then we can update the board, and I'd like to actually have them update the board.
Oh, that would be nice.
I think
That's
that
a
would
great
be- I
idea.
think that would be a real positive, having them have a voice and ownership.
Thank you.
And just to put the board's concern at ease, I will contact Sheehan administration tomorrow, and I will report back to Dr. Menzo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
I'd like to call this meeting